Grayson Duskwalker. That's a terrific username. Grayson Duskwalker wants to know, what are your thoughts on the marriage of practical props, sets, and digital props and sets? Can the two exist, or will digital become the ruler of all? I don't think that digital will become the ruler of all. I don't think that it is. I'm going to speak on behalf of the directors I know who love doing practical effects, like Jon Favreau, Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro. These guys love practical effects. They grew up on them. They ate, breathed, and slept them. And they got into film so that they could dress up with their friends and have these incredible adventures. And I think for all those guys, an entire film that's all green screen is like missing the point of why they became filmmakers in the first place. So for that reason, I think there may end up being plenty of films that are all green screen. Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is a deep cut example. But what Favreau is doing with The Mandalorian and what his team is doing with integrating digital effects and practical shooting, using the volume, using the Unreal Engine and the ILM software that they're developing for that, that is all a way of doing exactly what you're talking about, of integrating the practical and the CG so that everyone gets what they want. The reason practical effects have gone away is because once you can do it in CG, it's way less expensive to do it that way overall. And film producers are always trying to get things done for less. That's their job. I was on set on Pacific Rim for one of the shots of the kaiju punching through the building, and Guillermo told me at the shoot, he's like, "I wish I could do more of these, but I can't afford it. That's super expensive." So I think that Favreau is not just creating a toy box for himself to make Mandalorian. I think he's creating a toy box for the next generation of filmmakers, and I think he's probably thinking of it like that. Which is super exciting to me, because I love the idea that you could go to Best Buy and buy a television big enough to fill the screen of your camera, and put something on it and start to film in your own volume. That could be happening soon. There could be off-the-shelf software for doing that by the end of 21. Who knows? Let's see. Evan VK, second question from them. Could I be specific about what I worked on at ILM? Like, sorry, I answered that one already. There was a second question. Someone wanted to know about something that I built that didn't make it into the film. And I do have an answer for that. On AI, a significant sequence of AI takes place in a submerged amusement park. And it's where the boy, played by Haley Osment, meets the angel that sort of guides him on his journey, because she's there underwater. And as part of this sequence, we were building underwater funiculars, and I don't think there was a Ferris wheel, but we were doing all of these practical objects for the underwater shooting, and it was really, really fun. And at a certain point, I can't remember who was the art director on that show. I really can't. Anyway, the art director came to me and said, "Dennis wants a carousel. Just build one. Just do it." So I got to design and build a 4-foot diameter carousel, all out of laser cut plywood and acrylic. The sculpting department turned out some horses and some animals for me. The mold department made a whole bunch. I had, I had like spiral twisted poles. And then the painting department did the most unbelievable weathering of it to look like it was caked in barnacles and underwater. It was such a beautiful prop. And if you go to ILM, to the Letterman complex today, you can see it. It's actually on display in the hallway there at the Letterman complex. But at a certain point, Spielberg wanted more flowing seaweed on the props and the stuff that they were filming in the underwater dry for wet motion control stage. And Dennis Muren said, I can do more seaweed, but we're going to have to lose some things in order to be able to afford more seaweed in CG. And my carousel was one of the objects that went by the wayside. So sadly, it will never be seen in the film, but it still exists. And I took pictures of it last time I was there. The online animator has a really interesting question, and I appreciate this. When working at ILM, did you ever grow bored or felt that your work was becoming monotonous? I'd like to get a job someday where the work you're doing is always something new. Yeah. Yeah, certainly the work could get monotonous. Monotony is part of what being able to tolerate a high degree of monotony is absolutely what separates an excellent model maker from a mediocre one. But that's not the kind of monotony I think you were asking me about. There was a specific point in, I think, probably around 2001, where I'd been at ILM now 3.5 years. I'd worked on a few pictures. I'd gotten to do a whole bunch of stuff I'd always wanted to do. Got to build models for people who I revered on films that I liked. I got to go to the movies and see those models on screen. And I like to imagine that one of the things that made me good at my job when I was doing it for a living is that I like to always think about what the big picture is. So I wanted always to know the biggest possible picture. And when I would be working with someone who's as brilliant as Doug Chang, and he would see that I could take in the big picture and solve problems that before he even saw them, art directors like him and Peter Rubin, they gave me more carte blanche to do the things that I, at one point on the Newton-Rune shuttle, Doug was like, look, this needs an inside to the loading bay. Just do whatever you want in there. I'd already spent a few weeks making stuff, and he saw me doing what I was doing, and understood that I understood the aesthetic and let me go. So I wanted to know the big picture. And if I was still at ILM today, I think what I would have done is the same path my buddy Dave Fogler did, which is to end up becoming an effects director. I think that's the kind of track I would have looked towards following if I had stuck around at ILM, if Mythbusters had never shown up. But the fact is somewhere around late 2001, early 2002, I was definitely feeling like, what else is there? Like, is there a bigger thing that I could work on, a bigger picture? Linda Wolkovich, who ran the model shop at ILM when I was working there, still a great friend of mine, and I think was the longest serving producer on Mythbusters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly the case. Linda tells me that we went out to lunch in early 2002 or late 2001, and I was expressing this, like, I'm just like, I like this. I love this. I love all of everybody here, and I love the work, and I love the culture, but I just feel like I want a little something more. She said, like what? And I said, I don't know, hosting my own TV show. And then I probably forgot about that until she told it to me probably 10 years later. I worked at ILM for another 2 years after thinking that. But that's also kind of, how do I say this? That's also sort of the way I approach my future even now. I think about what it could be like, and then I think about what I can do to get it to be like a way that I want it to be like. So I was thinking to myself, I feel like I want to see and operate on a bigger picture scale. Well, here at ILM, that probably means becoming an effects director or an art director. I was never going to become an art director. I can't draw that well. And when people ask me about work advice, I'm always advising people, and I'll advise you now. Instead of thinking about what you want to do, think about how you want it to feel to be at work. And obviously, we all want it to feel awesome all the time. I'm not talking about that. I'm like, how satisfied do you want to be with your work? How much control do you want over the work that you're going to do? What kind of relationship do you want with your bosses? How much do you want to make? All of those are questions that I ask myself all the time about employment. And again, even now, looking into the future, I think in those kind of terms. What do I want it to feel like? What do I want it to be like? And I like to imagine that that's, brought me to where I am.